Hello and welcome to Prepspot. In this video, we are going to know about some of the most critical and complex current affairs shaping our world today. Today, we are going to take an in-depth look at the escalating anti-monarchy protests in Kathmandu, Nepal, and the resulting imposition of a curfew on 28 March 2025. This development has sparked widespread debate on constitutional democracy, cultural identity, and the dynamics of power in Nepal. In our discussion today, we will explore the background and context of these protests, understand the timeline of events, analyze the historical and cultural origins, and examine the broader implications this crisis has on Nepal's political landscape and international relations. Let's begin by setting the stage with the background and context. Nepal, a country with a rich and complex history, has long been a mosaic of diverse cultures and traditions. With a population of approximately 1.4 billion, Nepal has undergone monumental changes since the abolition of its monarchy in 2008. The monarchy, established in 1768 by Prithvi Narayan Shah and ruled by the Shah dynasty until 2008, was regarded as a unifying force and a symbol of divine authority, particularly as the nation was once recognized as the last Hindu kingdom. However, following the democratic movements and the consequential abolition of the monarchy, Nepal transformed into a secular federal democratic republic. Despite these reforms, many citizens still retain a deep emotional and cultural attachment to the monarchical system, which they associate with stability, cultural heritage, and religious identity. This nostalgia for a bygone era has now manifested in renewed protests, especially among those who are disillusioned by what they perceive as the failures of the current democratic system to address corruption, economic hardship, and social injustice. On 28 March 2025, at approximately 4:25 p.m. local time, the situation in Kathmandu escalated dramatically when violent clashes erupted between pro-monarchy protesters and security forces. The unrest was triggered by demands from demonstrators who wanted the restoration of the monarchy and the reinstatement of Nepal as a Hindu kingdom. These protesters, many of whom were inspired by a desire to reclaim what they believe is Nepal's lost cultural and religious identity, engaged in acts of vandalism, arson, and physical confrontations with the police. The affected areas included significant parts of Kathmandu, notably Tinkune, Sinmangal, and Koteshwar, and even near the airport, where the clashes were particularly intense. Despite initial attempts at peaceful demonstrations, tensions quickly escalated, forcing the authorities to impose a curfew at 4:25 p.m. to restore order and prevent further violence. The curfew, which lasted until 7 a.m. the following morning, saw the deployment of not just local police forces but also the army, underlining the severity of the situation and the state's determination to contain the unrest. Historically, the roots of these protests can be traced back to the abolition of the monarchy in 2008, when Nepal transitioned to a secular republic after a long and tumultuous period of political change. The decision to abolish the monarchy was met with mixed reactions. While many welcomed the change as a necessary step towards democracy and modernization, a significant segment of the population, particularly in certain regions, harbored a deep-seated nostalgia for the stability and cultural identity provided by the monarchical system. For these citizens, the monarchy was more than just a form of government, it was a symbol of unity, tradition, and religious continuity, a system where the king was not only a political leader but also a divine protector of Hinduism. Over the years, economic challenges, political corruption, and perceived failures of the democratic system have only deepened this sense of loss among pro-monarchy groups. In recent times, these sentiments have grown even stronger, leading to a resurgence of protests demanding the restoration of the monarchy and the re-establishment of Nepal as a Hindu kingdom. To better understand the gravity of this issue, it's essential to define some key terms and concepts. When we talk about monarchy, we refer to a system of government in which a single individual, the monarch, holds supreme power, often inherited through a family line. In the context of Nepal, this refers to the Shah dynasty that ruled until 2008. A Hindu kingdom is a state where Hinduism is the official religion, and the monarch is traditionally viewed as a protector of the faith. In contrast, a secular republic like modern Nepal separates religion from the affairs of the state, ensuring that no single religious group dominates government policy. Finally, the curfew, in this context, is a temporary restriction on public movement imposed by the authorities to maintain public order during emergencies, a measure that was deemed necessary by the Kathmandu District Administration Office in response to the escalating violence. Now let's take a look at some of the key figures and data that illuminate the situation. Reports indicate that during these protests, at least 2 people lost their lives, including Suresh Rajak, a well-known photojournalist who was tragically caught in the violence. Additionally, there were numerous injuries, including among police personnel who were trying to control the situation, with reports suggesting that over a dozen police officers were injured. Moreover, more than 105 agitators were arrested in connection with vandalism and arson, including prominent figures like Dhaval Shamsher Rana and Rabindra Mishra, both of whom are influential members of the Rashtra Prajatantra Party, a political party that advocates for the restoration of the monarchy. These numbers, while staggering, only represent a fraction of the underlying social discontent that has been building over the years. Turning to the socio-political implications of these events, the imposition of the curfew and the violent clashes have profound implications for Nepal's democratic fabric. The protests underscore a deep divide within the society, between those who see the abolition of the monarchy as a triumph of democracy and modernization, and those who view it as a loss of cultural and religious identity. This tension is not merely historical, it is actively influencing current political discourse and policy. For instance, the public outcry has led to debates within the government and in the media about the effectiveness of the current democratic system in addressing the needs of all citizens, especially those in regions with a strong monarchical legacy. In response to the unrest, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli convened an emergency meeting and deployed the army, signaling the government's serious intent to restore order. However, this heavy-handed response has also sparked criticism, with many arguing that it undermines democratic principles and freedom of expression. Furthermore, the curfew and the related arrests have raised concerns about judicial oversight and the protection of human rights in Nepal, particularly in the context of ongoing protests and political dissent. The protest itself, driven by calls for the restoration of the monarchy and the re-establishment of Nepal as a Hindu kingdom, touches on deeply emotional and complex issues. For many of the protesters, the monarchy represents a time of stability, cultural pride, and religious unity, a stark contrast to the present challenges they face, such as economic instability, corruption, and a perceived disconnect between the government and the people. The chants and slogans heard during the protests, such as Raja Au Desh Bachao, May the King come to save the country, are not merely political expressions, they are manifestations of a cultural identity that many feel has been eroded in the post-monarchy era. This demand, while not representative of the entire population, highlights the enduring influence of historical traditions on contemporary politics and the challenge of balancing modern democratic ideals with deep-rooted cultural sentiments. From a technical perspective, the decision to impose a curfew was not taken lightly. The authorities had to consider various factors, including the scale of the protests, the potential for further escalation, and the need to protect public and property safety. The Kathmandu district administration, in coordination with the police and the army, implemented the curfew swiftly, and despite the chaos and violence of the day, the curfew was lifted the following morning, which indicates that the state was able to restore a degree of order relatively quickly. This rapid response, however, has been a subject of debate. While some praise it as a necessary measure to curb violence, others criticize it as an overreach that could suppress legitimate dissent and freedom of expression. In terms of legal and constitutional implications, this incident raises important questions about how Nepal's current legal framework deals with political dissent and protests. The judiciary, particularly high courts like the Allahabad High Court in India or similar bodies in Nepal, often play a critical role in determining the legality of such measures. There have been calls for clearer guidelines and reforms to ensure that the rights of protesters are balanced with the need for public order. The recent events in Kathmandu have brought this issue to the forefront, and it is expected that legal debates and potential reforms will follow in the coming months. These discussions are crucial not only for Nepal but for any democratic society facing similar challenges of maintaining order without compromising individual freedoms. Another aspect that must be considered is the economic impact of such protests and subsequent curfews. Kathmandu, being the capital and a major hub for commerce and tourism, suffers significant economic disruption when such measures are enforced. Businesses close, transportation is halted, and daily life is severely impacted, which can have a ripple effect throughout the economy. In the case of the recent curfew, the disruption lasted for nearly 14 hours, which, while necessary for immediate public safety, also resulted in economic losses. These losses, combined with the potential long-term impact on foreign investment and tourism, add another layer of complexity to the situation. As Nepal continues to navigate its democratic journey, the balance between maintaining order and fostering a conducive environment for economic growth remains a delicate issue. The political implications of the protests are perhaps the most significant. The demand for restoring the monarchy and re-establishing Nepal as a Hindu kingdom is a challenge to the current secular democratic framework. This sentiment has gained momentum in certain regions, and it is being championed by political parties and leaders who believe that the abolition of the monarchy has left a void in Nepal's socio-cultural fabric. The opposition parties have seized upon this discontent to question the legitimacy and effectiveness of the current government, arguing that the state has failed to address the aspirations and needs of a significant portion of its population. These political debates are not merely academic, they have real implications for upcoming elections and the overall stability of the country. The events in Kathmandu serve as a stark reminder that political legitimacy in a diverse society like Nepal's hinges on the government's ability to reconcile modern democratic ideals with historical and cultural identities. As we analyze the situation, it is clear that the protests in Kathmandu, culminating in the imposition of a curfew, are symptomatic of larger issues at play in Nepal. They are indicative of a growing sense of dissatisfaction among a segment of the population that still holds the monarchical past in high regard. This dissatisfaction is fueled by a combination of economic hardship, political corruption, and a perceived failure of the democratic system to deliver on its promises. At the same time, the government's response, while effective in restoring order, has also highlighted the challenges inherent in managing mass protests in a rapidly changing society. The use of the army, while necessary to prevent further violence, has been criticized by human rights groups who argue that it represents an overreach of state power and a potential threat to democratic freedoms. Looking ahead, the implications of these events could be far-reaching. In the short term, there may be an intensification of political debates and legal challenges regarding the appropriate limits of state power in managing public protests. In the medium term, these events could catalyze a re-examination of Nepal's constitutional and legal framework, particularly concerning the rights of protesters and the responsibilities of the state to protect those rights. In the long term, if the pro-monarchy sentiment continues to grow, we could see a significant shift in Nepal's political landscape, potentially leading to reforms that might even revisit the idea of monarchy, albeit in a very different form from the traditional system. From an academic perspective, this case serves as an invaluable resource for understanding how historical legacies and cultural identities can persist and even resurface in modern democratic societies. It highlights the complexity of governance in a country like Nepal, where historical, cultural, and economic factors all intertwine to shape public policy and societal behavior. For competitive exam aspirants, this case offers a rich study in the interplay between political ideology, legal reforms, and social movements. It underscores the importance of examining both quantitative data, such as protest participation, casualty figures, and economic impact, and qualitative factors like public sentiment, cultural identity, and historical context. Furthermore, the Kathmandu protests provide a lens through which we can analyze the challenges of state governance in times of crisis. The imposition of a curfew, while a necessary tool to restore order, also raises questions about civil liberties and the appropriate balance between security and freedom. The legal debates that are likely to follow will serve as important case studies in constitutional law, human rights, and public policy. In addition, the economic disruptions caused by the protests, particularly in a major urban center like Kathmandu, illustrate how political instability can have far-reaching consequences beyond the immediate realm of governance, affecting everything from tourism to local businesses. The role of media in this entire scenario cannot be understated. The extensive coverage by various national and international outlets, from the Hindu and NDTV to international bodies like Reuters and BBC, has not only brought global attention to the events in Kathmandu but has also shaped public perception. Social media platforms have become the modern public square, where slogans like Raja Au Desh Bachao resonate with a segment of the population and spark widespread debate. This digital dimension adds another layer of complexity, as the interplay between traditional media, social media, and government communications becomes a critical factor in how these events are understood and acted upon by the public. It is also important to consider the broader geopolitical context. Nepal, positioned between two major powers, India and China, has historically been subject to external influences, and the current unrest can be seen as part of a larger narrative of regional power dynamics. While the protests are primarily driven by internal factors, such as dissatisfaction with the democratic system and a longing for the perceived stability of the monarchical era, they also have implications for Nepal's foreign policy. A resurgence of pro-monarchy sentiment could potentially alter Nepal's strategic alignments, affecting its relationships with both India and China. This adds an international dimension to the crisis, making it a subject of interest not just for domestic policymakers but also for global strategic analysts. In conclusion, the imposition of a curfew in Kathmandu on 28 March 2025, following violent clashes between pro-monarchy protesters and security forces, is a watershed moment in Nepal's contemporary history. This event encapsulates the enduring struggle between modern democratic ideals and historical cultural identities, highlighting the challenges faced by governments in managing diverse societal expectations. As we have discussed, the protests, driven by demands for the restoration of the monarchy and the declaration of Nepal as a Hindu kingdom, reflect deep-seated discontent that is both historical and current. The rapid response by the authorities, including the imposition of a curfew and the deployment of the army, underscores the urgency of the situation and the high stakes involved in maintaining public order. For competitive exam aspirants, this case study offers a multifaceted view of how historical legacies, cultural values, political ideologies, and economic challenges can converge to create complex governance issues. It serves as a reminder that effective policymaking requires not only legal and technical acumen but also a deep understanding of the social fabric. Moving forward, it will be critical to observe how these events influence future legal reforms and the overall trajectory of Nepal's democratic evolution, as well as the broader implications for regional stability in South Asia. Thank you for joining today's session, and I encourage you all to delve deeper into these issues as they continue to shape our understanding of governance, society, and the interplay between history and modernity. Answer this question in comments. The correct answer will be given heart and pinned. Lastly, we just want to let you know that we are a newly emerging online platform for competitive exams. Creating educational explainer videos like these requires a lot of effort, money, and time. If you like these videos and want us to excel and create videos in all categories of competitive exams, then you can consider supporting us with a one-time donation through the Ko-fi platform and also by becoming a member through Patreon. This will help us create more such informative educational videos in the competitive exams space. So, one last time, subscribe and share this channel with all your friends who are preparing for competitive exams. And also, follow us on social media platforms. The links are given in the About section of the channel and also in the video description. So, see you in the next video.